All right, what's going on, y'all? So today we're going to talk about how to bulk up and gain muscle without getting fat. So I've done many bulks in the past, and some of those bulks, essentially at the end of the bulk, it wasn't a pretty sight to see. You know, there were dirty bulks, and I put on a ton of fat, way too much fat, and it just frankly wasn't very aesthetic at all. And then I've also done bulks where I put on significant amounts of muscle while also keeping my abs, keeping a six-pack throughout the entire bulk. So today I'm going to talk about how I like to set up my bulks to where I can put on quite a bit of muscle, put it on actually very efficiently and very quickly, but while minimizing fat gain. Now, the first point I need to make here is that if you are in a calorie surplus, yes, there's different techniques you can use to mitigate the amount of fat that you're going to gain, but you will gain some fat if you are in a calorie surplus and you are bulking up trying to put on muscle. It's just going to come with the territory, but the amount of fat that you do put on can be minimized based off of these strategies. And if you're putting on a significant amount of muscle at the same time, you really, in the mirror and pictures and everything, you really won't even be able to tell that you even put on much fat, if at all. Now, for some of you out there, you're actually going to be able to bulk up while even burning fat in the first place. That's, for people that are currently recomping, you could be detrained, or you could be completely new to the gym. You've got kind of a beautiful grace period right there in the beginning. Can be anywhere from 2 to 8 weeks, sometimes even longer, that you can actually be burning fat and building muscle at the same time. But that's not exactly what we're talking about here. Today we're going to talk about how to do an actual true bulk while actually minimizing fat gain. All right, so the first point that I want to make is the leaner you start your bulk, the better. So this is going to work out for you for two reasons. First off, is it's going to give you more runway. Let's say that you've got 8 weeks or 16 weeks that you've got set up to where you want to go ahead and dedicate to being in a calorie surplus and bulking up. If you're starting in a leaner state, you're going to have more time to essentially do that. You might not have just 8 weeks because you're at a little bit higher body fat percentage. If you're at a lower body fat percentage, you now might have 20 weeks if you do this efficiently, that you can really actually be focusing on just building muscle, bulking up, all of that. And that's going to set you up to actually have a very, very good off season and really grow quite a bit of muscle before you actually decide to do your next cut, your next shred. The second point with this is that the leaner you are, the more insulin sensitive you're going to be, meaning that you're going to actually have greater nutrient partitioning. You're going to have a greater ability to essentially shuttle the nutrients where they need to go and put on that muscle. That's why, coming out of a bodybuilding show, your body's just soaking up every little bit of carbs and everything that you're feeding it. And you can go ahead and put on quite a bit of muscle right after a show, for weeks after a show, without putting on, frankly, any fat at all. Just the leaner you are, you're going to be more insulin sensitive, and you're going to give yourself a greater runway. Now, if you are already in a state where you're not that lean, you've got a couple options here. Either one, you can go ahead and do a mini cut, get yourself more insulin sensitive before actually starting your bulk, or you can go ahead and, just depending on where your body fat percentage is, you can go out and still have a good period of time. It just might not be as long as if you were in a leaner state. All right, so now let's get into actually how to go about doing this bulk. This is how I set up my bulks, and this is how I go ahead and do it with my clients. So first off, you're going to want to go ahead and find maintenance. This is, if you are just coming out of a cut, or if you have essentially been already bulking up, you want to know, frankly, right about what your maintenance level is. How many calories you need a day just to maintain your weight, maintain your strength, maintain where you're at right now. And that can take, anywhere from a week to 2 weeks to find, but this is where you should be tracking your food and all that. And that's another point I want to make here is when you're going into a bulking mode, when people are cutting, this is when they get really strict into tracking everything in MyFitnessPal or another food tracking app. And then when they bulk, they're kind of just eyeballing everything. You want to essentially be as on point as possible if you want to bulk as efficiently as possible. And when I say bulk, I'm meaning put on muscle while also not putting on as much fat. So you want to go ahead and calculate how much you're eating, find your maintenance, and then what you're going to do is week after week, you need to assess both the scale, so you need to assess your weight, and you need to assess your check-in picture. So this is where I suggest, have a day of the week. For me, it's Friday mornings. I get up, I pee, and then I take my check-in pictures. I do the same poses in the same spot with the same lighting every week. And this way I'm able to actually judge, how much muscle I'm putting on, how much fat I'm burning, all of that. Because the scale's not going to tell you everything. You can have water weight fluctuations, and you could be putting on muscle, which weighs more than fat, while actually burning fat at the same time. So this is where you need to use both tools at the same time, and then you can make calls from there on whether you need to have another food bump or essentially stay at that same calorie level. So let's say you found your maintenance. Now it's time to go into bulk mode. So you go ahead and you add, say anywhere from 100 to 300 calories per day on top of your maintenance to start growing. If you go the next week and you have, a weight increase and it looks like you've put on some good tissue, you might not need to go ahead and do another food bump yet. Maybe hold at that calorie range for another week, maybe even a couple more weeks, until you kind of stall out. Once you see that stall out, that's then when you're going to want to go ahead and implement another food bump. So with food bumps, how I like to do it is first, I like to go ahead and add carbs to my pre, intra, and post-workout meals. If you guys have heard me talk in the past about how I like to set up my diets, I prioritize my meals, and especially I prioritize my carbs around my workouts. This is to essentially allow me to have greater training outputs. If you are increasing in strength, you're increasing your volume, your intensity in the gym, all that, that's where you're really giving yourself the stimulus to grow. And then the nutrients, the food that you're actually giving it, is going to allow you to then have the building blocks and the materials to actually grow. So what I suggest is before bumping up, say, your breakfast or your last meal of the day, go ahead and start adding carbs to your pre, intra, and post-workout meals. And then from there, you can kind of start spreading it out throughout the day. You want to go ahead and add carbs slowly. So like I said before, this could be, a bump of, 100 to 300 calories per day. You could even do as small as, 50 calorie surplus per day. The problem with doing something so small as that is you're really playing close to the line. So, people like Greg Doucette have talked all the time about main gaining, all of that. And I do believe in it to an extent, especially if you're trying to minimize fat gain, but you just don't want to be playing too close to the maintenance line. If you're too close to the maintenance line, let's say you walk an extra 2,000 steps that day, you now actually could be in a calorie deficit. That's why I suggest, a good number is anywhere from like 200 to 300 calories in a surplus per day. And that's going to go ahead and kind of give you that assurance that you're not actually, on a little bit more active day, pushing you actually into a deficit. So focus on first adding carbs. In doing so, on that weekly bump, if you need a food bump, doing it in 100 to 300 calorie increments. So now this gets to the topic of carbs versus fats. I personally recommend adding fats last and adding fats slower than carbs, especially. If you've heard my video where I talked about low carb diets versus low fat diets, I even believe that in the off season with bulking. Yes, you need to have enough fats that you have proper hormone function and all of that, but you are going to essentially be getting more out of carbs. One, you're going to be having greater training output, so you're going to be able to actually progress in the gym better. But then B, carbs are more anabolic than fats are. So, and not only that, fats, when in a calorie surplus, have a greater propensity to be held as body fat than carbs do. So it's not a huge difference. If you're in a calorie surplus, surplus is a surplus, but there is still a little bit of a difference that carbs are used by the body a little bit more efficiently, especially by active people, than fats are. And fats will be stored as body fat a little bit easier. So don't be afraid to essentially keep your fats on the lower end. I keep my fats pretty low even when bulking, and it's kept me pretty lean. I've done bulks in the past where essentially I had a more moderate amount of fats, and then I've had bulks where I had a lower amount of fats, and the ones where I had lower fats and high carbs were the ones that I kept abs throughout the entire bulk. All right, so the next point I need to make is you need to try to keep your food as clean as possible. This goes back to the point of, tracking your food in an app like MyFitnessPal, all of that. You don't need to essentially, create an unhealthy relationship with food. You need to have breaks to where you can still have cheat meals, all of that. And in the off season when bulking, I do suggest having cheat meals, but you need to minimize it. Too many people go out and they just start, oh, I had a good leg day today, time to go get burgers and fries. That's bulks I've done in the past, and that's where you will put on fat quite quickly compared to, if you are doing this as clean as possible. The thing is, if you're having, say 3,000 calories a day, and those 3,000 calories are made up of 6 clean meals compared to 3,000 calories a day of 3 dirty meals, you're going to be getting a lot more out of those 6 clean meals. And so this is where, the cleaner you keep your diet, the better you're going to be as far as body composition. You're going to be able to put on more muscle and and essentially mitigate the amount of fat you put on, the cleaner you keep it. Now with this, this is where I suggest having, maybe one full cheat meal a week. That's where, it's a cheat meal that you decide whatever you want. And then maybe a mini cheat meal in the middle of the week. That's kind of how I set up my bulks. I'll have in the middle of the week kind of a lighter cheat meal that it might be something I'm cooking here at home. Or, it could be even just a burger and fry meal. And then on the weekends is something where, if I want pizza or I want those, whatever with cookies, I'm going to go ahead and do that. But try to minimize the amount of cheat meals you do, the meals off plan, and have an actual plan set in place of what your actual clean meals are going to be throughout the day. And those can vary. You can go ahead and set this up to where you're fitting it into your macros. You don't need to have like an actual bodybuilder diet plan. You can definitely do if it fits your macros. But like I said, the cleaner you keep this, the better off you're going to be if you are trying to put on muscle while minimizing the amount of fat. If you're just trying to bulk and put on weight, then just go for that. But if you are trying to actually keep abs at the same time, this is going to help you. All right, so another point is keep a light amount of fasted cardio in place. So if you're a hard gainer out there, this is where you're going to have to, kind of play with this. You might not actually want fasted cardio in, although I do recommend it for everybody for the cardiovascular benefits. But for most people out there, including myself, I keep fasted cardio in place. Even if it's just 20 minutes, 3 times per week, what this is going to do is it's also going to allow you to stay a little bit more insulin sensitive. So as you get deeper into your bulk, it's going to keep your blood sugar in check and all of that, which is going to allow you to have greater nutrient partitioning. And, if you are going the higher carb, lower fat route, this is going to help you. Now, if you are burning too many calories, essentially doing your fasted cardio that is pumping you into a deficit, you're going to have to either make the call to increase food, which is good. If you're increasing food based off of energy outputs, that's frankly what you want. But, you might need to go ahead and decrease the amount of cardio that you're doing if you are more on the hard gaining side. All right, so this is kind of how I set up the diets for myself and my clients when I'm going through bulk to stay essentially as lean as possible while putting on muscle in a very efficient way. The point I'm not going to touch here in this video is, going on the PED route and what, compounds to put in place and all of that, because that obviously does help things, but the points I've made today work if you're enhanced or if you're natural. And I've had clients that are natural, and I've had clients that are enhanced, and these points work extremely well for both. But if you are going the enhanced route, there are some other things you can implement to help you even more, to where you essentially are just, putting on crazy amounts of muscle, and frankly, like little to no fat at all. So we can talk about that in another video. If you guys want that, definitely drop that down in the comments down below. But I wanted to bring you this video today on how to actually structure your diet and set this up to essentially stay as lean as possible, mitigate the amount of fat that you put on while trying to bulk up and actually put on a good bit of muscle. But if you enjoyed this video, please do me a huge favor. Smash that like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already. Leave any comments or questions down below. Be happy, be positive, be powerful. Have a great rest of your day.